Joining me now is Stephen James, a qualified teacher, and he joins me now. Stephen, thank you for joining me. What happens when we get more and more young people not speaking another language? What does it have an impact on the future of this country?
Firstly, can I say Guten Abend? Thank you for welcoming me on the show.
Guten Abend.
Nee.
Es tut mir leid, so alles klar.
No, you've lost me now. This is the first time I've used my German GCSE in 20 years. So.
Oh, warum? Schrecklich. Alors, nous parlons français.
Bonnie de douche? No, I'm all out. It's I think
languages.
But they are hugely important, and for all the reasons you just said, about making links in the brains of that kind of logical way of thinking, then that creative way of thinking, it is hugely important. But what I think happens is there's this very romantic view of learning languages. That you're going to go and traveling and doing the grand tour and sitting on the Spanish steps and, declaring your love to all the Italian women in Italian. It's simply not the case. You're sat in classes learning about verb conjunctions and learning things off by heart. And essentially, it's hard work learning a language. It is hard graft. And sadly, it doesn't fit the kind of the way of teaching that exists at the moment, which is kind of very, learning through experience and learning through, putting yourself in those situations rather than just getting on with it, learning stuff by rote, which suits languages. And also at the same time, you're kind of missing out on a lot of that kind of intercultural stuff, which I think is so important when it comes to languages. It's not just about learning the sounds. It's about learning, why is German culture like this? Why is French culture like that? And you mentioned about the exchange trips, something that's, I think is a huge shame if they have declined. I've not seen any data on that. But I think, languages are important, same with music, same with art. But these are the things that are getting squashed out of the curriculum. And if you look at primary schools, for example, primary schools are where children are getting a kind of taste for all those different subjects. They're finding out whether they're good at them. They're finding out whether they love them, whether they're excited about them. And what they're not given, I think, is a good deal, basically. I'm a qualified primary school teacher.
Right.
Okay. My GCSE is in German, as I've already mentioned, is as far as my language skills go. In fact, I have got GCSE in Welsh as well. I'll claim credit for that. But me trying to teach Spanish to children in year 6 was comedy. You would have loved to send that lesson. I'm glad there weren't cameras in the classroom, because I was struggling along and learning the language at the same time as the children, because I was kind of having to learn. And, I'll hold my hands up and say those children did not get the best languages lessons through that, because I was having to learn too. Now,
so you need those teachers from other countries. I mean,
absolutely.
I guess if you haven't learned another language, you don't know. It sounds common sense. You don't know what you're missing out on. I mean, I was lucky enough that my parents went out to East Africa when I was little, and our school was an international school, and we learnt Swahili, but we also learnt Latin, and I've spoken French all my life because my mother had a French-speaking basis, and then but we loved it. You're so right. You could use it, and at my school, big shout out for Sir William Perkins in Chertsey, we would have lunch times with teachers where we'd have to discuss what we were eating in German or French. So it was fun. We could come and talk about our favourite bands, and we did exchange trips. So you could talk about music, and it's not just the cat sat on the mat. You're discussing.
It's relevant.
Yeah, it's relevant.
And this is again. So people aren't seeing languages as relevant. And I can give you a recent example, actually. My youngest daughter, she's only 7, and we've just come back from holiday in Italy, and we had a lovely time. And the hotel was full of people from all over Europe, all over the world. And she's off in the play area on the trampoline. She made her best friend for holiday. You know what it was like, inseparable for 2 weeks. And she was German, didn't speak a word of English. So what does my daughter do? being a creative thinker herself, she comes running over to me. Can I borrow your phone? Because I want to use Siri to translate. So straight away, it's, hey, Siri, I need to say this to my German friend. And it's doing all the hard work for her. So at 7, she already knows that the answer's there. So why learn? The tools are there.
No,
and that's the shame about it. Despite having
I love international school. Both my kids went to international school in Sydney, in Australia. And they learnt one day maths could be in French, the next day it would be in English, and then one day history would be French. Where, they were fully submersed. And they start school in Australia at 2 years, 9 months. So fully submersed. So both my children speak French, German, one speaks Spanish, and, the thing is, when they needed a Saturday job in the days pre-Brexit, they could go to France, being under 20, whatever it is, 5, they could go and work in Zara in anywhere in France, or they'd be like, Mum, I was a bit short of money while I was in Spain, so I waited tables for a couple of weeks. It opens the world out.
It does, but what you're saying there is really fascinating in itself, because international schools are brilliant, but it's disproportionate the number of private schools as well that teach languages to a later level in school compared to state schools. I think it's something like 50% of private schools are doing languages up to GCSE and beyond. I think it's only 16% of state schools. And why is that? There's been a huge shift in government focus, I would say, onto skills and employment and employability. Maybe employers just aren't asking for people who can do those skills, because if you need a contract translated, what are you going to do? You're going to bang it into the artificial intelligence. It'll do it for you nowadays. You don't need to employ someone.
Yeah, it's sad. It is sad. One of my daughter's friends, she's on holiday with him from uni, actually. He's got a ridiculously brilliant job of dubbing movies. He dubs movies into, I think, French and Spanish. Earns a shed load. I'm telling you, if you can translate movies now, Netflix, all those people are screaming for people who do that. And it's interesting that earlier we were covering that more and more kids, when they go to uni, just want to do computers because they think that's where the jobs are.
But that's a language in itself, being able to code in ones and zeros. It's a language I don't understand. Yeah. Maybe you understand it. I don't.
I haven't got a clue.
But they're speaking that language better than we are. And interestingly, Latin is becoming more and more popular in primary schools as well. That's increased by 10% because it's the root language of a lot of European languages as well. Yeah. And, I think it'll be a real shame if it's kind of squeezed out. And, I do give a slight nod to Nick Gibb, because he has poured some money into these national learning hubs, which I think just shows that it is value. They're thinking about it. But I just think there needs to be more. We need to take charge of it ourselves.
It is getting skinnier and skinnier, more and squished, isn't it? Sports for many schools has kind of been taken out of the curriculum. And then you've got the arts, and you've got the government talking about soft degrees. So you've got, English literature, that there's a decline there. The arts, all of those sorts of things. It doesn't speak well for the future culture of Britain. I mean, where are we going to get our future playwrights, our Shakespeares and what have you, if everybody just codes?
Indeed. It'll all be written by artificial intelligence.
Oh, don't.
All of it. Isn't that why Google's called theirs Bard, isn't it? Like Shakespeare, the original Bard. It'll just do it all for us. Well, no need for news presenters either. You'll be gone, replaced.
I know. You're depressing me now, Stephen. Stephen, thank you. Thank you so much. It's an interesting one, isn't it? Thank you. Stephen James totally depressed me there, qualified teacher, and talking about why there's such a decline in kids learning a second language. Look, again, get involved. I mean, I'm sure some of you have had an experience. He's right. It's become, and in fact, one of the articles actually said that learning a second language has become the area of middle-class girls in private schools. Should it be that way? Do you think that now with all of these apps, there's no need to learn another language?